What's up? Hello. Welcome to Sammy and Creepy. My name is Sammy, and this is where I tell you about something creepy. Literally, this channel is nothing more than me sharing with you creepy things that I find on the internet or creepy things that I've heard about. So if that's interesting to you, you could go ahead and subscribe. Tonight, I thought that we could talk about mimics and like the entity, and read some stories about some encounters that people have had with mimics. Of course, on Reddit. I am on Reddit Ghosts. I like to read and make sure that the forum is okay with they don't have any rules against people sharing their stories, but I still will give the name, the Reddit username, and all that stuff. Just so everybody gets their credit. But as far as I know, these are their personal encounters with mimics. But first, let's talk about what a mimic is. So essentially, now a mimic can be many things. SWs can mimic. There are demons that can mimic. Like, a mimic can be several different types of entities. But typically, I'm going to be honest, the whole purpose of them doing this is to incite fear. So typically, whatever is doing this mimicking is doing it to scare you, and they're not good, okay? They're not a nice ghost. They're an entity, and you should be careful, okay? So a mimic situation, I feel like I've made a video on this before, but I'm just going to catch you up and just in case I haven't. I know I have on short form content like TikTok and Instagram, but I don't know if I've covered it here. So regardless, a mimic entity, or a way that you would know you have a mimic or an entity that can mimic, is you could hear the voices or phrases of other people in your home even when they're not around. It typically does happen when they're not around. So let's say you live with your significant other, right? And they're at work and you hear them call you from the kitchen. And it's their voice, it's something they would say, but they're not home. That is where it usually starts. You'll hear them when they're not even home, not even around. It learns the phrases and voices of the people in the home. Or if it's a situation where it's like an SW and it's like on your property, you may hear voices out in your woods when you know someone's not there, or out in your yard and you know someone's not there, or maybe crying or laughing or screaming. Like, there's so many ways that they go about this, but in these situations, I'm talking about ones that have mimics in their home, pretty much, I think, from the ones I skimmed. And a mimic situation can get so bad, like they can get so powerful if you are scared enough and if you interact enough and you react to them enough. They can get so much energy and get powerful enough to actually physically manifest to look like a person. So let's say that person's not home, right? And you walk past, you might see that person out of the corner of your eye in the kitchen. That's when they have gotten strong enough to physically manifest and look like that person. There's been encounters where people will literally look directly at the person and they think it's their family member or significant other or friend or whatever, and that person is not even home. The thing typically doesn't say anything directly to you, but then there's been encounters where they have. Like, these things can get very, very strong if you give them enough energy. So the best thing to do if you think you have this in your home or on your property is to completely ignore it and have your home blessed. And if you don't know how to bless your home or cleanse your home, you need to find someone who does, because you really need to get rid of this thing. None of these things are good. There's never been a mimic encounter that turned out good. It's always to incite fear, and anything whose goal is to make you fear so that they can gain energy from you is a malevolent entity. Okay? They're not good. You need to get them out of your home. Why is my camera not focusing? Oh, it might be trying to pick her up. That's scary. Okay. So, this is by Reddit user dstone1985. I think we have a mimic in our house. This is flagged as personal encounter. My kids have always said our house is haunted. Recently, we have all experienced what I would describe as a mimic, and it seems to be ramping up, which is pretty normal. The first time, just a couple of weeks ago, I heard my 17-year-old son say, "Mom, hey mom." And that's typically, I want to say that's typically how it sounds. It's almost like it's the voice of the person that you know, but it's almost monotone from the ones that I've heard. So yeah. Right behind me, he was at school and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. Yesterday I heard my husband say, "What are you doing, babe?" And today my son heard his dad calling his name from the basement. Is this demonic? Most likely. And why all of a sudden? I tried to Google it, but it keeps bringing me some stupid movie. Couldn't really find much. So in response to this thread, Reddit user OK-buddy_ says, "My parents' house is haunted. I was downstairs one day riding their exercise bike and I heard my brother and dad come home and start arguing really loudly. Stomped around for a while and eventually went quiet. I went upstairs to see what was up and nobody was home. I called my dad and he was like 50 miles away. My brother was actually at his own house. I left and to this day I will not be alone in that house. When I was a kid, I used to hear scratching, walking, whispering, and occasionally screaming from the attic right above my room. My sister heard it too when she came into my room sometimes. I told my mom and she would tell me to pray. Like, bro, what?" They are religious and had the house blessed multiple times throughout my childhood, so I assumed they could hear things happening too. But they would never admit it. Just say not to go in the attic and to pray. My dad was really abusive in that house, but he was usually not terrible outside of it. I think the bad energy in there effed with his head. Yeah. That's another really bad thing about, having demonic energies in your home. Like, they can affect people and make people do things that they wouldn't typically do. And especially if they're doing something they're different outside of the home. Yeah. Reddit user Kicking Younglings said, "When I was a little kid, something in my house made it look like my oldest brother was behind me in the mirror. I eventually got so freaked out that I ran out of the room and ran smack into my brother, who was very much not in that room." Similarly, my dad once heard my mom's voice calling for him to turn around. He was playing video games on a couch, which was against the rearmost wall of the house, and my mom was out of the house at the time. Do not engage, cleanse if you can, but otherwise move away. Mimicry is demonic. I agree with that. OK_possibility_704 says, when I was a teenager and alone in the house without knowing it, I heard my mom talking to me. I was actually on the toilet and she was getting angrier and angrier at me from the bedroom opposite. She wanted me to go in there and was talking as if I had done something terrible that I had to be shown. I was about to go in there when the front door opened downstairs and my mom walked in with shopping bags. She'd been out the entire time. When she opened the front door, the shouting from the bedroom stopped. The door remained ajar. I told my mom about the incident and asked if she had been in the house prior to that. She said not for an hour. Oh. Reddit user Your Bartender said, "I used to live in an old house that was haunted, and this used to happen to me and my mom too. It was crazy. My mom was upstairs and she heard my dad come into the house. He yelled upstairs and asked her if she could come outside and help him with something. She finished what she was doing, went outside to see what he needed help with. He was in the garage. She asked him what he needed. He looked at her like she was crazy. He never came into the house and was outside the entire time in the garage. Another time, I was up in the attic and the door was open. I could hear my mom calling for me. Go downstairs to see what she wanted. She was clearly busy doing something. I can't remember, but she never called me. Makes the hair on my neck stand up when I think about all the things that used to happen in that house." L-Patron Dash says, one time my brother and I came home from school and heard what sounded like our basement TV was on, and as if there was a small little get together going on in the basement. We looked at each other, so I know we both were hearing the same thing. We went to investigate. Maybe someone left the TV on? No, nothing was on, nor was anyone home but us. My parents have gotten used to weird shit happening and hearing strange things that it doesn't even faze them anymore. I still get a heavy feeling whenever I visit. See, you should never be so comfortable with these things that you just don't care anymore. Reddit user I Likes Breakfast says, similar experience for me too. I worked in this old office building, and this one evening I was closing up shop, turning off my workstation, getting my backup ready to go when my coworker behind me walks in and stands near the office windows to look down towards the street, and then he calls my name. But he's not behind me. He's by the exit saying goodnight. I turned slowly and no one was there. I did hear and feel the footsteps, and the corner of my eye saw a figure place their hands on their hips and look down to the boulevard. Ew. Someone responded to that and I'd say that's a doppelganger from what I know. They tend to be tricksters more than negative, and there are demons that do the same thing, except for the demons will be known with other tricks and hauntings. That's true. I think there's a fine line though between those two types of entities. Reddit user Fall to Lose It All says, this happened to me as a teenager conveniently when I was home alone. Got home from school one day and was upstairs. Heard the front door open and close and my mom say hello and go into the kitchen. I went downstairs as she didn't answer me when I said hi back and asked how she was. In the kitchen, I realized no one was home and froze when I heard, what? Really loud next to me, and I ran upstairs and stayed there till she got back. So scary, horrible place. And then after that, when we moved, we had a side door built in, and then I used to hear it open and slam. And when you look, you'd be home alone, and it was shut and locked the whole time. My family didn't believe me, but eventually they all heard it when they were home alone too. It just seemed to eventually fizzle out and stop though. Those were creepy. Okay, let's see. Let's click on another thread, because a lot of you said you liked the longer stories. I think I have a mimic in my house. I'm not quite sure. What do you think? By Reddit user evening_ad2718. So here's what happened. I'm pregnant, and so I'm now home always. As I'm close to my due date, so my partner is out working most days. This morning I woke up to hearing his slippers sliding across the floor like he was walking, and him basically doing his morning routine, breakfast, drink, all of that. Then it started speaking, almost like it was scripted, saying things like, good morning, how are you feeling? Gemma, can you hear me? I'll be in the shed, call me if you need me. Things like that, and it was so bizarre and really creeping me out. My cats were flicking their ears like they could hear something. They were ultimately not bothered by it. Then the voice, my partner's voice, started getting louder and making these weird noises. Then what sounded like it was right behind me again, my partner's voice said, good night, Gemma. This weird force pushed my head into the pillow where I struggled for a couple of seconds, I guess, but it felt like minutes. I shot out of bed and my heart couldn't stop pounding. This has never happened to me before. We live in an old-ish house still, and there is a mirror right next to the bed, and I could see nothing was behind me. Is my pregnant mind playing tricks on me? But that force felt so real, I'm a little shaken. That is terrifying. Okay, under this thread, Reddit user Terminator1077 said, years ago, after my 16th birthday and days after receiving my operator's license, I had a similar incident. I hurried home after school to change into my uniform and grab a snack before heading to work. I went to my bedroom and changed, then walked into the kitchen to make a sandwich. When I heard my mom call my name from the other room, I immediately answered as I would any other time. In the kitchen, Mom, waiting on her to pop around the corner any second. It hit me how early it was for her to be home from work. I then said, wow, you're home early. Everything okay? I was answered again from the other room, just an hour or so. At this point in my life, it was only my mom and I living together, as she and dad were separated, so no chance of anyone else being inside. After making my food, I sat at the bar in our kitchen where I could see our driveway and anyone else being inside. I noticed only my truck, not her car. With instant spine-chilling chills, I hurried around the house to look for her, and I was alone. I ran out of the house, left my food, and raced to work. To this day, I do not know who or what this was, but definitely do not believe it was sleep paralysis, as I had been awake all day. No, that's not sleep paralysis. You experienced a mimic. Reddit user Floppy Fish Cake. These usernames get me every time. Years ago, my ex and I lived in a very old, creepy basement flat of an old Georgian house in England. Because of the risk of mold, everything was open plan, which meant no doors that closed between rooms and mostly archways. Even our bathroom had a swinging saloon door instead of an actual door. My partner would leave for work earlier than I would, usually around 5:30 or 6 a.m. And usually 4 out of 5 mornings, I would have sleep paralysis after he'd left and see someone walk into our bedroom and around our bed so that they were behind me. It used to freak me the hell out. Our landlords were pretty weird, so for a while I worried that it was actually the guy who lived upstairs sneaking in. All of that I chalked up to sleep paralysis. Years later, I didn't realize that's what it was at the time. But only one I can't explain was one morning when my ex had left. I tried getting back to sleep, but I couldn't, so I know I was fully awake. I was considering getting up when I heard our front door slam and him shout, "Hi, babe." Unusual for my ex, he was always very quiet around the house in the mornings, and I heard him running down the stairs into the flat. Everything in this flat was stone, so any shoes on the floor were loud. I laughingly called out and said, "What have you forgotten?" And the footsteps stopped immediately mid-run. "Babe?" No answer. I walk out there, literally 4 steps from our bedroom, and there's no one there. I text him and ask him if he came home, and he sent me a photo of him at work, 30 minutes away. He always locked the door when leaving for work, so I was safe inside, and the front door was still locked when I checked it. I heard weird noises and had sleep paralysis for the entire 2 years we lived in that place. It stopped when we moved to a new house. I've only had it a handful of times since then. Yeah, that place was evil. Okay, I think we'll end it here. Those were so creepy. I got chills at some of those last ones. And if you ever see me looking at the monitor, sometimes like the lights moving, I check on her. Okay. But yeah. Anyway, I hope those stories creeped you out. They creeped me out. And give me some topics in the comments. What other types of experiences should we read about? Because I really like reading these. These are creepy. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, all the things that YouTube wants you to do to let them know that you love my videos. And don't forget to stay creepy.